Hana Kim rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the glowing screens around her workstation on Luna Station. The massive communication center that floated in space near Earth's moon, where humanity listened to the voices of the universe every day and night without stopping. The coffee in her cup had grown cold hours ago, but she did not care because something strange was happening in the data streams that flowed across her monitors like rivers of light and numbers and patterns that usually made perfect sense to her. Trained Mind Taiho Park sat at the station next to hers, his fingers dancing across holographic keyboards as he adjusted the sensitivity of the deep space receivers that reached out into the darkness between stars like electronic ears trying to catch whispers from impossible distances. He had been working alongside Hana for 3 years now, and knew when something was bothering her because she got that focused look in her eyes that meant she had found something interesting, or dangerous, or both. "What are you seeing?" Taiho asked, without looking away from his own screens because the night shift on Luna Station was always busy, and they could not afford to miss anything important that might be floating through space, disguised as background noise. Hana pointed at a section of her main display where waves of data moved in patterns that looked almost random, but contained something that made her scientist brain itch with curiosity. "There is something buried in Sector 77 Alpha, a signal that keeps repeating, but it is so faint that the computers almost missed it completely." Minji Choi looked up from her systems analysis station where she monitored the health of all the equipment that made Luna Station the most advanced listening post that humanity had ever built. She was younger than Hana and Taiho, but her understanding of the complex machines around them was better than anyone else on the station, including the senior engineers who designed them. "How faint are we talking about?" Minji asked as she pulled up the same data on her screens and began running her own analysis programs that could find patterns in places where other people saw only chaos and randomness. Hana adjusted the filters and amplification settings, pushing the station's receivers to their absolute limits as the signal slowly became clearer, like a voice calling from the bottom of a deep well. "It is almost nothing, maybe 1 part in 10 billion compared to the background radiation, but it has mathematical structure that cannot be natural." The three of them worked together through the remaining hours of their shift, each bringing their own expertise to bear on the mystery signal that seemed to dance just at the edge of detection. Taiho isolated the frequency bands where the signal was strongest, while Minji ensured that their equipment was running at peak performance, and Hana began the slow process of trying to decode whatever message might be hidden in the static. When the day shift arrived, led by Senior Communications Officer Kyung Nam, they found the 3 night shift workers still hunched over their stations with empty food containers and coffee cups scattered around them like the remains of a long battle against the unknown. "You 3 look like you have been here for days instead of hours," Kyung said with concern in his voice, because he had seen this kind of obsessive focus before when his people found something that captured their imagination completely. Hana looked up with bloodshot eyes but excitement practically radiating from her tired face. "We found something that should not exist, a signal that is definitely artificial but coming from a direction where we know there are no human colonies or installations." Kyung's expression immediately became serious because Luna Station's primary mission was to detect signs of alien intelligence, and any confirmed discovery would change everything for humanity. "Show me what you have found." For the next hour, Hana walked Kyung through their analysis while Taiho and Minji provided technical support and additional data that painted a picture of something unprecedented in human experience. The signal was not just artificial but seemed to be encoded using mathematical principles that were familiar yet subtly different from human approaches to data compression and transmission. "The pattern suggests multiple layers of encoding," Hana explained as she highlighted different aspects of the signal on the main display screen. "Someone built this message to be very difficult to detect or decode unless you knew exactly what to look for." Kyung studied the data for several minutes before making a decision that would affect not just Luna Station, but potentially all of human civilization. "I want both teams working on this around the clock until we either decode it completely or determine that it is some kind of natural phenomenon that we do not understand yet." Over the next 72 hours, Luna Station became a hive of focused activity as the best minds in human communications technology worked to unlock the secrets hidden in the faint signal from deep space. Hana barely left her workstation except to grab quick meals and short naps in the station's rest area, while Taiho and Minji took shifts monitoring the equipment and running new analysis programs. The breakthrough came on the third day when Hana realized that the signal was not trying to be received by anyone outside the original transmission source. "This is not a broadcast intended for strangers," she announced to the team that had gathered around her workstation. "This is an internal communication, like a phone call between family members who never expected anyone else to be listening." That revelation changed their entire approach to decoding the message, because instead of looking for universal mathematical concepts that any intelligence might understand, they began searching for context clues and communication protocols that made sense only within a specific cultural and technological framework. When the message finally revealed its secrets, the silence in Luna Station's main communications center was so complete that Hana could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears as she read the translated text that appeared on her screen in simple human words that carried the weight of an entire civilization's desperate hope. The message came from beings who called themselves Kythera, inhabitants of a star system 47 light years from Earth, who had achieved technologies that humanity could barely imagine, but who faced a threat that their peaceful nature had left them completely unprepared to handle. The Vorthak Empire was coming to their worlds with ships and weapons designed for conquest and slavery, and the Kythera had only days before their civilization would be destroyed or enslaved forever. What made the message even more heartbreaking was the clear indication that the Kythera had never intended for anyone outside their own species to receive it. They were coordinating emergency evacuation procedures between their scattered colonies and space stations, sharing final messages between loved ones who might never see each other again, and documenting their scientific achievements in the desperate hope that some remnant of their culture might survive the coming destruction. Hana sat back in her chair with tears running down her face as the full implications of their discovery became clear. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, an entire peaceful civilization was about to be destroyed by an aggressive empire that viewed weaker species as nothing more than resources to be harvested or obstacles to be eliminated. Taiho placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and spoke the words that everyone in the room was thinking. "We have to tell Earth Command immediately, because if these Kythera are real, and if this Vorthak Empire is as dangerous as the message suggests, then humanity needs to know about both of them." Minji was already establishing a secure communications link with Earth, while Kyung began composing the report that would inform humanity's leaders about the existence of alien intelligence and the first evidence of interstellar war that their species had ever encountered, as Luna Station prepared to transmit the most important message in human history. Hana continued to monitor the Kythera signal and discovered additional transmissions that painted an even more detailed picture of the crisis facing these distant strangers. Children were being evacuated to underground shelters, while their parents remained on the surface to coordinate defenses that everyone knew would fail against the overwhelming force that was approaching their worlds. The last clear transmission that Hana received before the signal began to fade contained a simple message in the Kythera language that her translation programs rendered into words that would haunt her dreams for years to come. "If anyone among the stars can hear this, please remember that we tried to live in peace and that we loved our children more than our own lives." Admiral Jinwoo Lee stood at the head of the emergency session table in the secure conference room, deep beneath the United Earth Defense Council headquarters in Geneva, his weathered face showing the strain of processing information that challenged everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the decoded Kythera transmissions alongside tactical analysis that painted a picture of interstellar conflict beyond anything in human experience. Counselor Yoonji Han shifted uncomfortably in her chair as she reviewed the intelligence reports that had arrived from Luna Station just 6 hours earlier, each page containing revelations that would reshape human foreign policy and military doctrine for generations to come. Her background in diplomatic relations had prepared her for many challenging situations, but nothing had prepared her for the possibility that humanity might need to choose between safety and conscience on such a massive scale. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond the immediate crisis facing these Kythera, Yoonji said carefully. her voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that every word spoken in this room could affect the future of human civilization. If we respond to their situation, we risk exposing Earth to attention from this Vorthak Empire that appears to possess military capabilities far exceeding our own. General Dongmin Seo pulled up additional displays showing human military assets and defensive capabilities compared to what little they could determine about Vorthak technology from the intercepted communications. The comparison was sobering because while humanity had made impressive advances in space-based military technology over the past century, they remained essentially a single-system civilization with limited experience in interstellar warfare. Our analysis indicates that the Vorthak Empire operates on a scale that makes our entire military seem insignificant by comparison, Dongmin explained as he highlighted key data points that demonstrated the vast technological and numerical advantages their potential enemies possessed. They appear to control multiple star systems and have been conducting interstellar military campaigns for centuries, while we have barely begun to establish permanent colonies beyond our own solar system. Dr. Soo-Young Lim leaned forward across the table, her expertise in xenobiology making her uniquely qualified to understand the broader implications of first contact with alien intelligence, even under such desperate circumstances. She had spent her entire career studying the possibility of life beyond Earth and the protocols humanity should follow. When that momentous discovery finally occurred, we cannot allow the fear of potential consequences to override our responsibility. As intelligent beings who have accidentally witnessed the planned genocide of an entire peaceful civilization, Soo-Young argued with passion that reflected her deep commitment to the scientific principle that knowledge carries moral obligations. The Kythera never intended for us to receive their communications, which means they pose no threat to humanity and are seeking no assistance from us. Yet we now possess the knowledge of their suffering and potential destruction. Commander Kyung-soo Nam activated his own set of displays showing detailed analysis of the distances involved and the technological challenges that any rescue mission would face, given humanity's current capabilities in faster-than-light travel and deep space operations. His background in reconnaissance and long-range military operations made him acutely aware of the practical limitations that would constrain any possible response. The Kythera system is located at the extreme edge of our current operational range. Kyung-soo reported with the precise tone of someone accustomed to delivering difficult assessments to senior leadership. A rescue mission would require our most advanced ships operating at maximum capacity, with no possibility of return, unless we could establish refueling capabilities in the target system. The debate continued for hours as Earth's leadership struggled, with questions that no human government had ever faced before, weighing the moral imperative to help innocent beings against the practical reality that any intervention could expose humanity to retaliation from a vastly superior military force. Meanwhile, additional transmissions continued to arrive from Luna Station as Hana and her team worked around the clock to extract every possible detail from the fading Kythera communications. Dr. Hajin Ryu entered the conference room with the latest intelligence update, her expression showing the exhaustion of someone who had been analyzing alien technology specifications for 3 straight days without adequate rest. The data she carried contained detailed information about Kythera scientific achievements that demonstrated their civilization's remarkable advances in energy production, medical technology, and environmental engineering. The technological intelligence we have gathered from their communication suggests that the Kythera have achieved breakthroughs in several fields that could revolutionize human civilization if we could establish peaceful contact with them, Hajin reported, as she shared holographic representations of Kythera energy systems and medical devices. Their power generation technology appears to be completely clean and sustainable, while their medical knowledge includes treatments for diseases and injuries that we consider incurable. Admiral Lee studied the new information carefully, recognizing that the potential benefits of contact with the Kythera added another layer of complexity to an already impossible decision. The possibility that helping these aliens could advance human technology by centuries had to be weighed against the risk that attempting to help them could result in humanity's own destruction. Counselor Min-hyuk Oh raised concerns about the precedent that any decision would establish for future encounters with alien intelligence, pointing out that humanity's response to this first contact situation would define their reputation among other spacefaring civilizations that might be observing from the shadows. The choice between intervention and isolation would send a clear message about human values and priorities that could affect interstellar relations for generations. We must consider not only the immediate consequences of our actions, but also the long-term implications for humanity's place in a galaxy that apparently contains multiple intelligent species and ongoing conflicts between them. Min-hyuk argued as he pulled up projections showing possible future scenarios based on different policy choices. Our decision today will establish whether humanity is viewed as a potential ally, a neutral party, or a species that abandons others in their time of greatest need. General Yejin Park provided additional military analysis, showing that while a rescue mission would be extremely risky, it would not be completely impossible given humanity's current capabilities and the element of surprise that would work in their favor since the Vorthak Empire had no knowledge of human existence. Her assessment suggested that a carefully planned operation might succeed in evacuating at least some Cathera civilians, even if it could not prevent the overall conquest of their system. The turning point in the debate came when Luna Station transmitted the final clear communications they had received from the Cathera, including messages between family members saying goodbye and scientists documenting their research in the hope that someone might someday benefit from their discoveries. The emotional impact of hearing an entire civilization face extinction with dignity and grace, while thinking of others even in their darkest hour, proved more powerful than any logical argument. Counselor Jiwon Song stood up slowly and looked around the table at the faces of the people who would decide humanity's first response to alien intelligence in crisis. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion as she spoke the words that would change the course of human history. I move that we authorize a rescue mission to the Cathara system using our fastest ships and most experienced crews, Jiwon announced formally. We may be risking our own safety, but we cannot call ourselves civilized if we ignore the suffering of innocent beings when we possess the knowledge and potentially the means to help them. The vote was closer than anyone expected, with several council members changing their positions multiple times as they struggled with the magnitude of the decision they were being asked to make. When the final tally was announced, the motion passed by a margin of just 2 votes, authorizing the largest and most dangerous mission in human history based on a message that was never meant to be heard by anyone outside the civilization that sent it. Fleet Admiral Jiho Kang walked through the corridors of the UES Determination, humanity's most advanced heavy cruiser that would serve as the flagship for the rescue mission to the Cathera system, his boots echoing against the metal deck plates, as he mentally reviewed the enormous challenges facing his hastily assembled fleet. 3 weeks had passed since Earth's leadership made the unprecedented decision to intervene in an alien conflict, and now 1,200 human souls were traveling through the darkness between stars toward a destination that might already be consumed by an enemy they had never faced. Captain Yunho Choi stood on the bridge of the destroyer UES Defiance, studying tactical displays that showed the formation of ships that represented humanity's first interstellar military expedition, each vessel pushed to its maximum performance capabilities as they raced across impossible distances to reach beings who had no idea that help was coming. His 3 destroyers formed the spearhead of the rescue fleet, fast and heavily armed ships, designed for reconnaissance and rapid strike operations that would likely determine the success or failure of the entire mission. Dr. Narijian monitored the medical facilities aboard the frigate UES Mercy, ensuring that her 2 hospital ships were prepared to handle casualties from both human and alien species using equipment and procedures that had been developed from the technological specifications found in the Cathera communications. The challenge of providing medical care to beings with completely different physiology kept her teams working around the clock to develop treatment protocols that might mean the difference between life and death. For the refugees they hoped to rescue, Colonel Sunho Kim reviewed deployment plans with his Marine battalion aboard the assault transport UES Guardian, knowing that his troops might be called upon to fight ground battles against an enemy whose capabilities remained largely unknown, despite weeks of analysis by Earth's best intelligence specialists. The Marines had trained extensively with weapons and tactics designed to counter what little they knew about Vorthak military doctrine. But every officer understood that they were preparing to fight an enemy that possessed centuries more experience in interstellar warfare. Intelligence officer Hyemin Yu spent her days deep in the analysis centers of the flagship, studying every fragment of intercepted Vorthak communications that the fleet had managed to gather during their journey toward the target system. The picture that emerged from her research was deeply troubling because the Vorthak Empire appeared to operate with ruthless efficiency that treated entire civilizations as nothing more than resources to be harvested or obstacles to be eliminated. The Vorthak military doctrine appears to rely on overwhelming numerical superiority combined with energy weapons that can drain planetary defense systems within hours rather than days. Hyemin reported during the daily intelligence briefing that kept the fleet's senior officers informed about their enemy's capabilities. They prefer to take prisoners for slave labor when possible, but they do not hesitate to destroy entire populations if resistance proves too costly to overcome. Engineer Daesung Wu worked frantically in the ship's modification bays, leading teams of technicians who were adapting human weapons and defense systems based on Kythera scientific data that continued to arrive through long-range communications as the rescue fleet traveled deeper into unknown space. The technological exchange had already produced remarkable improvements in human military hardware, with shield generators operating at previously impossible efficiency levels and weapons systems that could adapt their output to counter specific types of enemy defenses. The most remarkable aspect of the journey was the ongoing communication with the Kythera themselves, who had been stunned to learn that their desperate internal messages had been intercepted by an unknown alien species that was now racing across the galaxy to provide assistance that they had never requested or expected. The cultural exchange that developed during the 3-week voyage provided both species with unprecedented insights into alien psychology and technology. Kythera scientist Veltar became the primary liaison between the two species, sharing detailed information about Vorthak military capabilities while expressing amazement that beings from another star system would risk their own safety to help complete strangers. His transmissions revealed a civilization that had achieved remarkable technological advancement while maintaining philosophical commitments to peace and cooperation that made them almost helpless against military aggression. We have monitored Vorthak expansion for several decades and always hoped that our isolation would protect us from their attention, Veltar explained in one of his longer communications to the human fleet. Our defensive capabilities are limited to planetary shields and early warning systems because we never imagined that anyone would attempt to conquer civilizations that posed no threat to their security or expansion. The technological collaboration between human engineers and Kythera scientists produced innovations that neither species could have achieved independently, with human military expertise combining with Kythera energy technology to create hybrid systems that promise to give the rescue fleet capabilities that the Vorthak Empire would not expect from a previously unknown alien species. These improvements came at a critical time because long-range sensors were beginning to detect the massive Vorthak invasion fleet that was approaching the Kythera system from the opposite direction. Captain Minhyuk commanded the Advanced Reconnaissance Squadron that pushed ahead of the main fleet to gather intelligence about the tactical situation they would face when they reached the Kythera system. His ships operating at the very edge of their sensor range to avoid detection, while collecting data about enemy strength and deployment patterns. What his scouts discovered was far worse than even the most pessimistic projections had suggested. The Vorthak fleet consists of over 300 ships ranging from small patrol craft to massive battleships that appear to be designed specifically for planetary assault operations, Captain O reported during an emergency conference that included all senior officers in the rescue fleet. Their formation suggests a systematic approach to conquest that will begin with the destruction of orbital defenses, followed by ground invasion to secure strategic resources and population centers. Commander Jiwon Song led the evacuation planning team that was developing procedures for removing as many Kythera civilians as possible from the combat zone before the invasion began. using transport ships that had been modified to accommodate alien physiology and life support requirements. The challenge was enormous because the human fleet lacked the capacity to evacuate more than a small fraction of the Cathara population, meaning that difficult decisions would have to be made about who could be saved and who would be left behind. The psychological pressure on the human crews intensified as they received increasingly desperate communications from Cathara families, who were saying goodbye to loved ones while preparing for an invasion that everyone knew they could not survive. The emotional weight of knowing that an entire peaceful civilization was about to be destroyed, despite humanity's best efforts to help, created stress levels that threatened the mental health of personnel throughout the fleet. Admiral Kang made the difficult decision to share selected Cathara communications with his crews because he believed that understanding the stakes of their mission would help his people perform at their maximum capability when the battle began. The recordings of Cathara children asking their parents why bad people wanted to hurt them proved more motivating than any military speech about duty and honor. Dr. Youngji Shin, the fleet's xenopsychologist, worked with both human and Cathara personnel to develop communication protocols that would be essential during combat operations when clear understanding between the species could mean the difference between successful coordination and catastrophic friendly fire incidents. Her work revealed remarkable similarities between human and Cathara emotional responses to crisis situations, suggesting that the two species shared fundamental psychological traits despite their completely different evolutionary origins. The final days of the journey were marked by increasingly frantic activity, as both species prepared for a battle that would determine whether the first meeting between humans and friendly aliens would end in successful cooperation or mutual destruction. The weight of representing humanity in their first interstellar conflict was not lost on anyone in the rescue fleet, as they understood that their actions would establish precedents for all future encounters with alien intelligence. When the Cathara system finally appeared on their long-range sensors, showing 3 inhabited planets surrounded by space stations and orbital facilities that represented thousands of years of peaceful development, the human fleet could also detect the massive Vorthak invasion force that was approaching from the far side of the system, like a dark cloud of destruction that would soon engulf everything in its path. The human rescue fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Cathara system to find a scene of destruction that was already well underway, with Vorthak warships systematically destroying the orbital installations that represented centuries of peaceful scientific achievement, while smaller attack craft began their assault on the 3 inhabited planets below. Fleet Admiral Jiho Kang stood on the bridge of the UES Determination and watched as an entire civilization faced extinction in real time, the weight of command pressing down on him as he realized that his decisions in the next few hours would determine whether humanity's first intervention in alien affairs would end in heroic rescue or tragic failure. Captain Yoon-ho Choi received his orders and immediately led his destroyer squadron toward the largest concentration of Vorthak ships, knowing that his role was to create enough confusion and damage to draw enemy attention away from the evacuation operations that would attempt to save as many Cathara civilians as possible before the invasion was complete. His 3 ships were vastly outnumbered, but they possessed the element of surprise and weapon systems that had been enhanced with Cathara energy technology during their journey across the stars. The first exchange of fire between human and Vorthak forces revealed both the challenges and opportunities that the rescue fleet would face in the coming battle, as enemy shields proved more resilient than expected, while their weapon systems caused devastating damage to any ship that remained in their firing range for more than a few seconds. However, the Vorthak commanders were clearly surprised by the sudden appearance of an unknown alien fleet and required several critical minutes to adapt their tactics to counter this unexpected threat. Commander Ji-won Song led the evacuation squadron toward the primary Cathara world, where massive cities housed millions of civilians who had no experience with warfare and no understanding of why strangers from across the galaxy had come to hurt them. Her modified transport ships began the desperate process of loading refugees, while Cathara officials tried to maintain order among populations that were experiencing their first taste of genuine terror. Major Yejin Park landed with her Marine battalion on the surface of the second Cathara world, where Vorthak ground forces had already begun their assault on the underground shelters that protected the most vulnerable members of the alien civilization. The fighting was brutal and chaotic as human soldiers found themselves defending alien children against enemies, who viewed all non-Vorthak life as expendable resources to be exploited or eliminated. Pilot Seungmin Bae discovered during the first engagement that Vorthak shield technology could not adapt quickly enough to counter human weapons that constantly changed their energy frequencies, a tactical innovation that humanity had developed during conflicts with space pirates, who used similar defensive systems. His fighter squadron began targeting key enemy ships with coordinated attacks that overwhelmed their defenses through rapid frequency modulation rather than brute force. Gunner Cha Young-yoon realized that the kinetic weapons that formed the backbone of human military doctrine were surprisingly effective against Vorthak armor systems that had been designed to counter energy-based attacks from other alien civilizations. Her recommendations led to immediate tactical changes that allowed human ships to inflict significant damage on enemy vessels that had previously seemed nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. The tide of battle began to shift when Cathara, Engineer Mordan, overcame his species' philosophical objections to violence and began working directly with human technicians to merge their technologies in real time, creating hybrid weapon systems that combined human tactical innovation with Kythera energy manipulation capabilities. The resulting weapons proved devastatingly effective against Vorthak ships that had never encountered such unusual combinations of alien technology. Dr. Hajin Ryu made the breakthrough that ultimately determined the outcome of the battle when she realized that Kythera energy technology could be used to supercharge human ship systems far beyond their normal operational parameters, allowing smaller human vessels to match the firepower of much larger Vorthak warships. The process was dangerous and put enormous stress on human equipment, but it gave the rescue fleet the ability to engage enemy ships on nearly equal terms. The space battle raged for hours as human and Cathara forces fought desperately to prevent the complete conquest of the 3 inhabited worlds, while Vorthak commanders struggled to understand how an unknown alien species had developed such effective countermeasures to their proven military doctrine. Explosions lit up the darkness between planets as ships from 3 different civilizations engaged in the first truly interstellar battle that any of them had ever experienced. Captain Minhyuk Oh led a daring assault on the Vorthak command ship, believing that the destruction of their flagship would disrupt enemy coordination enough to give the evacuation operations time to rescue more civilian refugees. His attack succeeded beyond all expectations when the massive enemy vessel exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations that destroyed several nearby ships and sent shockwaves through the Vorthak formation. The ground fighting was equally intense, as Major Park's Marines discovered that human tactics and weapons were well suited to the close-quarters combat that developed around Kythera population centers, while the aliens they were protecting provided crucial intelligence about local terrain and infrastructure that allowed the human forces to outmaneuver their enemies. The sight of human soldiers dying to protect alien children had a profound psychological impact on both species. Dr. Nari-John worked frantically to save both human and alien casualties in her medical ships, developing new treatment procedures as the battle progressed and learning to adapt human medical technology to treat injuries in beings whose physiology was completely different from anything in her previous experience. Her success in saving lives from both species became a powerful symbol of the cooperation that was developing between humans and Kythera. Even in the midst of violent conflict, the Vorthak invasion force had never encountered resistance from multiple alien species working in coordination, and their tactical doctrine proved inadequate when faced with enemies who could combine different technological approaches and adapt their strategies in real time. The psychological impact of facing determined opposition from beings they had never heard of began to affect enemy morale as the battle continued far longer than their commanders had anticipated. Kythera scientist Veltar provided crucial intelligence about Vorthak ship weaknesses that he had observed during previous encounters with the Empire, information that allowed human attack squadrons to target specific systems that would disable enemy vessels without necessarily destroying them completely. This approach proved more effective than purely destructive attacks because it removed ships from the battle while requiring fewer resources from the human fleet. The turning point came when a coordinated assault by human and Kythera forces succeeded in destroying the main Vorthak battle group. leaving the remaining enemy ships scattered and demoralized as they faced the unexpected reality that their invasion had been defeated by species they had previously never encountered. The surviving Vorthak commanders began withdrawing their forces rather than risk further losses to opponents, whose capabilities they had clearly underestimated. As the battle drew to a close, the cost of victory became apparent to both species, as casualty reports revealed that nearly 40% of the human rescue fleet had been destroyed or severely damaged while fighting to protect aliens they had met for the first time. The Kythera worlds had also suffered massive damage to their infrastructure and population centers, with millions of civilians killed or displaced during the invasion attempt. The aftermath of the battle saw human and Kythera personnel working together to rescue survivors from damaged ships and destroyed installations, with the shared experience of combat, creating bonds between the two species that transcended the differences in their biology and culture. The successful defense of the Kythera system represented humanity's first major victory in interstellar warfare, but it came at a price that would affect both civilizations for generations to come. 6 months after the battle that saved the Kythera system from conquest, Hana Kim stood in the newly constructed Joint Communications Center on the rebuilt orbital station above the primary Kythera world, watching as technicians from both species worked together to install equipment that would serve as the foundation for the Galactic Communications project that had grown from her accidental discovery of an alien distress call. The facility represented the first permanent installation built through cooperation between humans and Kythera, using technologies that neither species could have developed independently. President Jinseo An addressed the combined assembly of human and Kythera representatives during the formal signing ceremony that established the alliance between their two civilizations, her words being simultaneously translated into both languages as she spoke about the bonds that had been forged through shared sacrifice and mutual defense. The treaty signing was broadcast throughout human space and to Kythera colonies that were still rebuilding from the devastation caused by the Vorthak invasion attempt. The technological exchange that had begun during the desperate battle for survival had evolved into a comprehensive partnership that was transforming both civilizations in ways that neither species had anticipated when the rescue fleet first departed from Earth. Kythera energy systems were solving humanity's power and resource shortages while human defensive technologies were being adapted to protect Kythera worlds from future threats that might emerge from the dangerous galaxy that surrounded them. Kythera scientist Veltar worked alongside human researchers in laboratories that had been established to study the implications of their successful cooperation, analyzing everything from weapons technology to cultural exchange protocols that would guide future interactions between their species. His research had revealed remarkable similarities in the ways that humans and Kythera approach scientific problems. Despite their completely different evolutionary backgrounds, Dr. Youngji Shin published her groundbreaking study on interspecies cooperation that documented how the crisis had brought out the best qualities in both humans and Kythera, with human protective instincts complementing Kythera scientific innovation to create combinations that were more effective than either species could achieve alone. Her work was becoming the foundation for new fields of study that examined the psychology of interstellar cooperation. The Kythera Memorial Institute had been established to honor the human personnel who died defending an alien civilization, with the names of every fallen soldier and crew member inscribed in both human and Kythera languages on monuments that would ensure their sacrifice was never forgotten. The institute also served as a research center studying human military tactics and strategic thinking that had proven so effective against the Vorthak Empire. Captain Wonho Yun commanded the first joint human Kythera starship that had been designed, from the beginning, to incorporate technologies from both civilizations, creating a vessel that represented the potential for future cooperation between species that had chosen to work together rather than compete for resources and territory. His ship served as both a symbol of the alliance and a practical demonstration of what could be achieved through genuine partnership. Admiral Jinwoo Lee reviewed intelligence reports that indicated the Vorthak Empire was conducting extensive research into human military capabilities after their unexpected defeat in the Kythera system, with enemy agents attempting to gather information about Earth's location and defensive preparations. The Empire had clearly been surprised by humanity's intervention and was now treating humans as a potential threat to their expansion plans. The ripple effects of humanity's first interstellar military intervention were spreading throughout the galaxy as word of the successful defense reached other civilizations that had been living in fear of Vorthak expansion for centuries. Multiple peaceful species had begun attempting to establish contact with humanity, hoping to gain protection or alliance against the aggressive empire that had terrorized their region of space for generations. Xenosociologist Dr. Minji Yoon studied the cultural changes that were occurring within human society as ordinary citizens struggled to understand their species' new role as protectors of alien civilizations, with public opinion polls showing overwhelming support for continued involvement in galactic affairs despite the risks involved. The psychological impact of successfully defending innocent aliens had given humanity a new sense of purpose and confidence in their ability to make positive changes in the universe. The Galactic Communications Project had detected dozens of additional distress signals from across the galaxy, each representing another species in crisis that might benefit from human intervention or assistance, though the logistics of responding to multiple emergencies simultaneously presented challenges that Earth's leadership was still working to address. The project had evolved far beyond its original mission of listening for signs of alien intelligence. 3 new peaceful species had already established formal diplomatic relations with both humans and Kythera after learning about the successful defense that had prevented genocide in the Kythera system, creating the foundation for a defensive alliance that was beginning to shift the balance of power in their region of the galaxy. Each new member brought unique capabilities and knowledge that strengthened the growing coalition. Engineer Daisung Wu led the joint development teams that were creating new classes of warships designed specifically for interstellar defense operations, incorporating lessons learned from the battle against the Vorthak, while preparing for future conflicts that would inevitably arise as humanity became more involved in galactic politics. The new ships represented quantum leaps in capability compared to the vessels that had barely succeeded in saving the Kythera. The economic transformation of human civilization accelerated as Kythera scientific knowledge enabled breakthroughs in manufacturing, agriculture, and space travel that were creating unprecedented prosperity, while freeing humanity from the resource constraints that had limited their expansion beyond the solar system. Trade agreements between the allied species were establishing new frameworks for interstellar commerce. Commander Kyungsu Nam established the Joint Training Facility, where human and Kythera personnel learned to work together in military and civilian operations, developing protocols that would be essential if their alliance faced future threats from the Vorthak Empire or other aggressive civilizations. The facility had become a model for interspecies cooperation that was being studied by diplomatic missions from across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire's response to their defeat had included increased military buildup and aggressive expansion into other regions as they sought to compensate for the loss of the Kythera system, while avoiding direct confrontation with the human-led alliance that had proven more formidable than anticipated. Intelligence reports suggested that the Empire was developing new weapons specifically designed to counter human tactics. Hana Kim reflected on how her routine night shift assignment had evolved into a discovery that changed the course of galactic history as she monitored the dozens of communications channels that now linked Earth with allied civilizations across hundreds of light years. The message that was never meant to be heard had become the foundation for the largest interstellar alliance that any of the participating species had ever imagined. The children who had been evacuated from Kythera worlds during the invasion were growing up in integrated communities where human and alien families worked together to rebuild their civilization, while preparing for a future that would be shaped by cooperation rather than conquest. Their education included lessons from both species' histories and technologies, creating the first generation of truly galactic citizens. The success of the Kythera rescue mission had established humanity's reputation throughout their region of the galaxy as the species that answered distress calls even when doing so put their own safety at risk, leading to a steady stream of requests for assistance from civilizations facing various forms of crisis or oppression. Each new mission presented unique challenges, but also opportunities to strengthen the growing alliance. As Hana monitored the latest batch of intercepted communications from distant star systems, she understood that humanity had irreversibly committed itself to playing an active role in galactic affairs through their decision to respond to a message that was never intended for their ears. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the potential to create a future where peaceful civilizations could thrive without fear of destruction by aggressive empires that viewed other species as expendable resources.